Okay, got it. So everyone, it sounds like everyone had a good week this week. I hope everyone had a chance to visit with their partners. It's very excited to hear about how all of that is going. So let me get my presentation going for Canva, and I will get started. Present. All right, let's see here. Present new screen, this one. And you should be seeing the full screen. Give me yes, please.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Love that. So we already got our week 3 done. So even better. So this week we're getting ready to talk about presentation skills. Presentation skills is one of my favorite ones to teach. We all are up in front of people multiple times for different reasons, whether it's BNI commercials, whether it's actually director trainings, or maybe it's your 10-minute presentation. Maybe you're not even in BNI and you get up to give presentations, workshops. Like there's a slew of things I can even think about. Maybe it's your elevator pitch to somebody. You've got your own business and you've got a great stakeholder that you want to contract with and you've got them in the elevator. Even presentation skills can help you with the elevator pitch. Where we're going to go through this week is we're going to actually go through all 3 phases of like presentation. So I like to talk about the preparation. We all know preparation is key. Then we're going to talk about the delivery piece. I'm going to give you some pointers on maybe PowerPoints, maybe some ways for actually delivering the material. Then we're going to move into the follow-up. So what can we do after it's over? Because once the event is over, it doesn't mean that our job is done. There's actually still more steps that we can do to keep things going. And then we're going to talk about what our homework is for this week. So that's kind of where we're going this week. And let's see if we can go ahead and get that journey started. Some people, it sounds like you shared in the chat maybe some of your things you learned from week 3. So I missed seeing some of those, but were all of the topics at least covered in our takeaways from last week? So last week we talked about experiential learning activities, right? We talked about core activities and what ELAs do, and core activities, closers, openers, revisitors, energizers. So we kind of talked about those. So just a quick recap on those is kind of what I just did, just reviewing what we did. And let's go ahead and look at this week. So thinking about presentation skills, can anybody share with me what their biggest challenges are when it comes to presentation skills? Anybody want to raise their hand and share with me when you think about presentation skills, what's your biggest challenge, or maybe even your biggest fear? I'm okay with either. Go ahead, Sally.
I would say that I always want to read what the content, and that's a challenge for me. I'm getting better at not doing that. Creating, I would say, to understand how to create something that is bullet pointed or something like that, so that I don't rely on the reading of the material, would be helpful.
That's a huge struggle. Like that took me a long time to overcome. Like it's really easy for me to go ahead and just read what's on the screen. Like that's my number one rule to facilitators when it comes to presentation skills is don't read off the screen. Like that's literally what we're going to talk about today, because that does a couple of things to the audience. Just by starting off, if you're reading the stuff on the screen, more than likely that involves you somewhat facing away from the audience if you have to look at the screen, which means they aren't at center for you. If you show your back to the audience at any point, that's a big no-no, right? So at any point, if you're having to read the screen, sometimes that can cause them to feel like, oh, I'm not a part of this presentation or this experience. So that's just one part of that. We will discuss that. So yeah, that's a huge struggle. Got some recommendations for that. So thank you for sharing that. Kelly, go ahead.
So I would say one of my biggest challenges is when I give a workshop, it's very interactive. And as a trained coach, it's very purposeful to bring people in. So the challenge is to deliver the content while helping everyone engage with every single question and find their answer, like find themselves in that answer. Sorry, I'm biking while I'm listening, so I'm like
multitasking. I love it. Love it.
I've been in meetings all day and I needed to move.
Laboring about this. She's laboring about this, man. I'm feeling it. Okay, no, I got you.
I really got that upset about it. So it's making sure that I can help everyone find themselves in the response so that they don't tune out and that I don't spend too much time like going down one path, but bringing it back to center, back to the content, and addressing things as they come up.
So I just had this experience today, believe it or not. So I'm working with the New York Department of Corrections, and I've got a group of uniformed people. And if you'd have any idea in your mind how a uniformed group of police officers, they're all instructional designers, like they're all learning people, but they all started in the uniform. So today at 11 a.m., I've still got an hour of content before lunch. At 11 a.m., somebody comes in and says, the chief wants all instructors in a town hall meeting right this minute. And I'm sitting here like, okay, how many is that affecting here? 10 of my 15 people were affected. And they all had to get up and walk out in the middle. I was like, okay, what do I do? Right. So then the five of us that were left kind of just chatted. 30 minutes they were gone. So then they came back, they dropped a transformational bomb on this group and saying, Monday, you guys get to train 120 people at 5 different locations. And the trainers didn't even know about it yet. They found out about it today, and they've got to start training it Monday. Well, they've got another week-long training with this company that I'm working for. They have a week-long training next week with this company. They've got a different facilitator coming on site. And so they came in the room all freaking out, complaining, like they were like, I don't know what's going on. And then here I am trying to get us back on track. Like I've got the most foundational piece of the why I'm here these 3 days was happening at that instant. And they yanked all yanked out, and they left them in a situation where they were all like upset. So I'm like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, Rusty. I'm gonna let them vent to me and talk about what just happened so I can get all of the air clear, and then I'm gonna find a way to tie this back to where we're going again. So it was almost like a readjustment to psychological safety again. Like I needed to get their needs met again and recentered, right? It wasn't what I had planned to do, but it's a good example of sometimes, yes, I need to try to work with this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and get them all their needs met, which is a true facilitation technique. We have to design activities and moments for them to be able to share, for them to feel psychological safe, for them to then figure out a way to try to connect everything they're saying back to something. The only way that's going to happen is through practice, but also by somehow plucking things out. Sometimes you have to ask for extra shares until somebody shares something you can say, okay, that's the one I'm going to grab and connect it to the next topic. Like maybe you haven't had that one thing yet. And then maybe you're going to ask this other person that hasn't been sharing a lot, saying, okay, what are your thoughts? Maybe somebody's going to have that one thing that I'm going to pluck out and be like, okay, that's the one. Here's the connection. Now we're back on track again. And sometimes you have to lead a little bit too. Like there's maybe times where you have to say, maybe reframe, since we're talking about framing at times, maybe we have to reframe something to give them another idea. I had to reframe quite a few things today and be like, okay, how can I get them to say what I'm trying to get them to say without giving it to them? I had to reframe it in a different way. And somebody says, oh, you mean this? I'm like, yeah, that's such a good idea that you just said, right? That it's a lot of it's that at different times. Yeah, it's a big dance, huge dance. And if you're having to then pay attention to bullet points on the screen while trying to do that, too many parts of the brain are going. So I, Sally, where you're coming from, it's like, yeah, that's almost holding you back. It's almost holding you hostage, right? Yeah. Yeah, Barb, go ahead.
Thanks. So when you're doing something interactive and you ask for people to share and people don't want to share, that's always fun. So I had that happen at a workshop a couple of months ago, and they're like, we're just going to keep it to ourselves. And like, this is about finding things in common and, discovering new things about each other. And they're like, no, we don't feel like it. But today, I actually reached out to a bunch of people ahead of time, and I gave them a little piece of paper of what I was looking for. And I had a ton of shares. So I kind of preset the room a little bit with a few people, and then other people joined in. So because the experience of people not sharing, it kind of deflated my workshop a little bit last time. So
Yep.
That's how I handled it. I don't know if you have other ideas or suggestions in the moment if that happens.
It does happens quite a bit. Like, in fact, my intro yesterday with this group of corrections officers kind of started that way. There was one particular young lady that she came in and instantly she was like, I am not a morning person. My coffee has not moved in. Like, even the first activity that I did, she didn't even write down anything on the index card. And then when she realized that she was going to have to be moving around the room with something on the index card, she's like, oh, well, I didn't do nothing. And it's like she was not bought in. Like, instantly, I had that feeling like she's got this wall built up. And so I had 3 cards prepared with challenges on them in case someone did not have something to share and could continue. By the end of that second activity I did right after it, she was all in. She came in today with cupcakes, if that tells you how much of a shift she made
Mhm.
just from the
Love it.
activities we did and the buy-in. She was not ready mentally for it. And then she was. Now, the thing that I can recommend you, I love the pre-work idea. Maybe if you could send an article about what you're going to be talking about to them so they can pre-read something on the topic you're talking about, maybe even with follow-up questions that they can be asking themselves, is a nice way to start that. The other way that I like to start things is in pairs. So even before we even get started, I'll frame why we're there. Most people don't want to share right out of the gate because they don't feel safe. So how can we do a paired activity in the beginning to get them to start at least talking to
Mhm.
one another? In that time, they're going to find something that they are agreeing on, that they're going to find that they've got a lot of the same problem. And even then, if they don't, say, okay, let's find a different partner. Let's see if we can't find another challenge that we can solve. Maybe you have to do a couple of rounds of pairs. And again, it's a dance. Now, that is eating away at your time, but that investment of time that you're making up front is going to pay off in dividends in the end, because I guarantee you're going to make up some of that creation time through the collaborative effort you're making in these activities in these pairs. It's going to help fill in some of the gaps for those people as we go along.
Yeah, I love that. And I have done that once before as well, of pairing people and having them actually share about the other person, because
Yep.
when they share what they heard from somebody else, there's a whole different energy that
Yeah.
comes out of it. Instead of saying, hi, my name is Barb and I'm this, but if I'm talking about someone else, there's more energy. And then also, I've also shared, I give you an example. For me, this happened. And then did anybody else relate? And then somebody is like, oh yeah. So I try and draw them in that way if I have to as well. So I've tried a bunch of different things, but thank you for all your suggestions. Those are great.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's what we're here to do. This is a support group. We're all a support group here.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions or anything before we move on to the next topic? Get some good stuff heading today, and I'm excited to continue on. All right, let's get started with the first piece of content, and that's going to be talking about preparation. So I was always told that preparation is key. I will never forget that. For some reason, it's just going to always be in my brain. Preparation key is key for me. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about here. It's going to be like almost preparing a recipe, right? If we want this nice recipe of presentation skills, of this dinner of presentation skills to be done, we have to put it in the crock pot for a while. Sometimes it's got to marinate, right? So we're going to marinate some things here. We're going to do the prep work. It's like getting all the ingredients put in the crock pot, and then we're going to go to work and come back to it 8 hours later, and it's going to be ready for us, right? So this is all the stuff we're throwing in there beforehand. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's your style. Like, when I talk about presentation styles, can anybody think of different presentation styles? Can anybody name a presentation style that they can think of? Go ahead, Donna.
Well, I don't have this one, but lecture is a presentation style. I'm a
Yep.
lot more interactive.
Mhm.
Yep.
Interactive. Yeah.
Yep. I can get on board with that. Any others can I think of? Go ahead, Sally.
Would humor be a style?
Yeah, like I say, humor, people use humor quite a bit when it comes to this stuff. And so I'm totally on board with when it comes to humor, because people use it quite a bit. I like to use humor quite often. It helps break the ice. It helps get people comfortable. Sometimes it helps get people psychological safe, right? What other styles can you think of?
I think about like a preacher with like fire and brimstone, like the people who are there, like not just lecturing, but they are there
Yep.
and like scaring, almost scaring you. Like,
Yep.
so, I mean, sometimes you want to learn not to do what not
Yeah.
to do.
I almost think of that as persuasive at times, yet also motivational. They're like, let me persuade you to feel the way I do, but then I'm going to build you up with the positive stuff. So it's almost like a mix between persuasive and motivational, right? So different styles have different reasons. So I'm going to give you a few styles with a little bit of background behind them. So the first style I'm going to bring up is motivational. Motivational is a style of presentation. It typically is used sort of like at sales meetings to try to hype everybody up, or maybe it's used at a keynote to get everybody excited to kick off a conference. Motivational, upbeat, trying to get people excited, get people going. Tony Robbins is one of the big motivational speakers I can think of out of the right off the bat. You know, in some cultures, Tony Robbins may not be very prominent in their culture. In my culture, it is. Tony Robbins, he's always funny, he's always in your face, he's always bringing it in the paint. Like, it just seems to always be one of those that I goes to when it comes. If you don't watch much Tony Robbins, you should. Put him down for motivational and watch some of his styles. Informative is another presentation style. That one is really specific. It gives a lot of facts and specifics to what you're talking about. So that one is one that I use pretty often. When it comes to the next one, let's talk about arousing. Arousing, that's kind of a weird term to call it, but an arousing presentation is one that is used to make the audience consider a topic. We're wanting to arouse people to really think about things, like almost like a reflective type of presentation style. Persuasive is another one. Persuasive is used to help audience accept and agree with what's being presented. That means I'm trying to persuade you to get on board with what I'm trying to sell, right? It's almost like a sales technique, almost in a way. I'm trying to get you to get on board. So I'm kind of persuade you. There's ways to do that in presentation styles. There's also a decision-making presentation. When it comes to decision-making, that's to convince an audience to act. That means we're wanting you to take some action from this, right? There could be some bleed over from some of these. Like, I could even use motivational to get you to act, right? So it's almost like I want you to think about one presentation could contain pieces of all these, right? At some point, maybe I'll come out of the gate arousing, trying to get you all upbeat, maybe motivational. Then I may go into, here's an informational type style in this section. Then I'm going to move to maybe persuasive here and end in motivational, right? So knowing the kind of differences between the styles, I think is going to be a big hit for you. There's something else I'd like to talk about here, and that's called the presenter impact. When I talk about presenter impact, I'm going to go to the next slide to show you a graphic here. If you look at this graphic, the impact that we have as a presenter, all right, if you saw 7%, what do you think of when you see that picture? And I would say 7% of our impact comes from this. What do you
Words.
think? The words we use. Only 7% of our impact comes from the words we use. All right, what if I said the 38%? That impact comes, 30 of our impact comes from what as a presenter?
Voice.
Yes, how we say it, our inflection, our tone. You know, there's a lot of different things I can say. How confident we say it, how comfortable we are on stage saying it. If there's conviction behind it, that is 38% of our impact comes from that. Not even the words, just the tone. All right, now what about the 55% comes from this?
Is it eye contact or body language?
Yes, and it's all of it. It's nonverbal communication. I knew we had a smart group here, Isaac. I told you they'd get them all. Yes, 55% just comes from our nonverbal communication, right? So if you look at just those last two categories, if you add up 38% and 55%, you get 93%. 93% of our impact comes from how we say it and how we look saying it. So our words make up only 7%. So you tell me, from a presenter standpoint, what's way more important, the words we say or how we say it? Okay, that's a lot of impact there. That was a big eye opener for me when I learned that. right? And once I learned that the way I look and how I say it was more important, the rest of it just followed. Like once I started doing this first, the words just kind of came to it, right? To know that only 7%. What's everybody kind of think about that percentage? Was anybody surprised by some of that, how high they were? Some yeses, some nos, right? Me, once I first saw it, yes. Now I know for exactly that is accurate, if not more, right? So very interesting stuff there. Let's keep talking about before the presentation. Let's talk about the actual design of the presentation for a minute. Couple of things I want you to take away from when it comes to the design in your presentation. The biggest thing I want you to remember, less is more. We hear that term all the time, less is more, right? If I were to put lots of sentences on this slide, I'm going to put myself in what Sally struggles with sometimes and read on the slide, right? If I don't put a lot on the slide, Sally, that means I'm going to probably interact and try to just go with the flow a little bit more, because if I'm going in presentation, then I feel like I know the content enough that I could probably just talk off the cuff about it with what comes up, right? That way, if I've got less on the screen, there's less for me to focus on. All right, there's a rule that I follow called the 6x6 rule. When it comes to the 6x6 rule of slide making, in fact, I rather do 3x3, but 6x6 is kind of the most common that I see. The 6x6 rule says no more than 6 bullets per slide, no more than 6 words per bullet. Again, I prefer less, but that's a good rule of thumb, especially for people that are just starting to practice slide design and getting better at it. 6x6 is a good way to start it, but I prefer less. Like here, I've got 5 by, I don't know, 3 maybe, right? So 6x6 says no more than 6 bullets per slide, no more than 6 words per bullet. That really helps you keep from putting too much on the slide. Why would I want to prevent having less on the slide? Or why would I prevent having more on the slide by having less? What's the benefit there?
No engagement. They're zoned out already.
They're reading all the words on the screen while you're talking about it. Are they? You can't read and listen. It's not possible. People say that they can multitask. No, they can't. It's a redistribution of what your focus is. All right, that just means you're putting less percent on this and more percentage on this. It can't happen. So if they're reading, they're not listening. So I'm going to give them a second to read this bullet point. Now let's talk about it for a minute. Okay, read this bullet point. Let's talk about it a minute, or let them go ahead and scan over it real quick, and then let's have a conversation about it. All right. So 6x6 rule is a great way for designing your presentation. Another thing that I want to talk about is have a plan with what you're doing in your design. Don't just open PowerPoint and start throwing words on a slide and saying, well, I'm just going to make this slide now, and I'm going to throw these words on it. I will sit down with a pad of paper and actually draw squares on paper and actually write down, okay, I'm going to talk about this on this slide. I'm going to talk about this on this slide. I'm going to talk about this on this slide. I would rather have that plan, because if I were to sit down at the computer, I've done it too many times. I will sit down, I will slide make, and at the end, I've got 52 slides for a 10-minute presentation. I'm like, okay, Rusty, hold on. Like, you just went way off course, because there's so many great ideas. I'm like, I got to get it all out. It's got all the things have to happen now, right? Not so much. If I've got a plan on paper, that's going to hold me really accountable. First presentation in BNI that I saw, like a first member out of the gate that I watched do a presentation. She was a friend of mine. She says, oh, Rusty, I'm so excited. Today's my 10-minute. I've got 37 slides. I said, what? You got how many slides? And she's like, 37. I said, you know how much time you've got? I said, you got 10 minutes. She says, that's okay. I'll make it through. No, you won't. So she did her presentation. She made it through slide 4. She's like, oh my God, I thought I had so much more time. No, you don't have that much time. Has anybody ever worked? I know Marie has. Has anybody worked with the C-suite level of organizations before? When you go into a board meeting and you're supposed to give a report to the C-suite, how many slides are you going to go with? You might know, like maybe 2. And what do they want? They usually want it all printed out and all the data on paper. Martha's celebrating with balloons. I just saw them go by. Cool, that's fun. Yeah, so yeah, it's about 2 slides, right? They don't have time for that stuff. So you have to also know your audience. That's another piece, is know your audience. The thing that I want to say about having a plan, the audience only pays attention long as you know where you're going. I like that quote and I like to keep it in my head. The audience only pays attention as long as you know where you're going. If you're fumbling around on stage and don't know where you're going, they're gonna eat you like sharks, like you're the blood, like you cut your leg in the water. They're gonna come at you. They're gonna eat you alive because they know. Right? So always design your presentation so you have a plan going in. The next thing I want to talk about is framing your story. We've heard about framing before, right? Frame, message, tie down, all that good stuff, right? Let's talk about framing when it comes to your presentations. When I talk about framing your story, a well-crafted message is the fundamental building block of all successful communication. We know that, right? We talked about this a long time ago. What I can tell you about framing your message in your presentations, you need to instill your story in 3 to 4 small points. I like to think of it, if I can't tell my slide to a CEO in an elevator going between floors 1 and 3, then it's too much information. Okay, if I can't distill what I want them to take away in 3 to 4 small points, then I've got too much. Now, what you do after you get that information out, like if you do a lot of engagement and you end up being on that slide for 30 minutes, that's fine, because maybe that's what that class or that group needed. But when it comes to instilling the initial information, 3 to 4 small points, get the information out, and then let's engage, right? Because if you think about the 90-20-10 or the 90-20-8 rule we talked about, 90 minutes of content, 20-minute chunks in interaction every 8 minutes. 8 minutes is not long. We've got to get that interaction going again. If you spend longer than 8 minutes talking on a slide, you've been there too long. Right? It's time to move to an interaction. So 3 to 4 small. So frame your story in a way that you can tell it in 3 to 4 small points. The last thing I want to say is practice, practice, practice. Like I can always remember in school, the question somebody asked me was how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Does anyone remember how you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, 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 right? What I can tell you about practicing. Last time I spoke at a conference was in New Orleans a few weeks ago. I was speaking at a conference, and again, I can tell you, I think I told you guys this last time, that hotel room on each side of me, they knew my presentation probably better than I did because they heard it 3 times. Right? I practiced it every single time I had a chance. I was practicing that presentation, because the only way we are going to be able to nail that is if we practice. Practice makes perfect. Rehearse all of your PowerPoints, your decks, what are your lead-ins, your activities, right? Don't just say, oh, well, when I get in front of them, I'm going to know how to explain this activity. And then I got there the next day, I was like, okay, Rusty, how are you going to say this? No, practice it, right? Rehearse your timing. How are you going to know that your timing is going to go well if you don't practice it? Like, I can't just prepare a presentation of 10 slides and say, oh, that's about 40 minutes. And then I get in there and the first 3 slides are 40 minutes. I'm like, okay, Rusty, you didn't do that well. Timing. It's all about timing yourself. Nothing's wrong with actually asking a friend to listen to you speak through it once. Why can't you say, hey, would you mind me just going over some of these points for you? Are they landing correctly? One thing I hated when I was in school for music, I was in conducting classes for choral conducting, and they were like, you have to conduct in front of a mirror. You know how awful that is? Conducting, watching yourself in the mirror. I hate looking at myself as it is. Now I have to look up a mirror and watch myself conduct. Hey, you know how boring that is? It's all about rehearsing, though. It's about recording yourself and playing it back and watching yourself. What better way to figure out if your movements and your talks are landing than recording it and watching it back? I record stuff and watch it back. I'm like, wow, Rusty, that sucked. Right? Like, what better way to know the real honest truth about something than recording yourself and playing it back? Right? So I can recommend doing that. Prepare everything you need in advance. Practice, practice, practice. All right. What were some high points for you from this preparation slide? Did something jump out to you as, oh, I haven't thought about that? Go ahead, Sally.
I hadn't thought about for my presentation in the fall, when they come in, say, today, when you leave this workshop, you'll be able to, and then give them the 3 or 4 small points before I launch into everything else. So that was a good get. Thank you.
In instructional design, which is actually what I'm teaching this week, so instructional design, how to design training. So I trained as in certifications. What you just told me was an objective, right? I taught objectives today to my people. In fact, that's what I was teaching when they got yanked out of my class. By the end of this session, you'll be able to do this, this, and this. Those are objectives. That means by the end of this, you'll be able to have an outcome of this, right? I always start my sessions with outcomes, right? So that's a great point to bring up. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, look, what I'm loving about this, Rusty, is about 6 years ago, I did presentation training and then didn't do a lot with it, to be honest. And what I'm loving about this is everything you've gone through has brought a lot of it back to me and is reinforcing that probably somewhere in me, I've got it. Now I just have to, I mean, I have been using it, but not as much as I could. What I loved about is the 6x6 rule. So every time I do a presentation, we do a lot of webinars and things like that. I always use a lot of visuals. I had a question for you about that. A lot of visuals, but I love the 6x6 rule because I know about putting less is more and few words, but I hadn't ever heard of the 6x6 rule. So that gives me a better frame. My question to you, if I may ask, is I try to do a lot of presentations like the presentation impact one you did with only visuals. What are your thoughts on that?
That's my preference.
Excellent.
That is my absolute preference. I prefer to actually put a picture on a screen with maybe one bullet point or even a title on a slide, because that's going to spark their brain to start thinking about, like I did with the pictures. You saw that those were words. You saw the guy with the megaphone that's speaking. You saw the eye, that's nonverbal contact, right? So I'm leading a little bit and giving a little context clues, because then we can jump right to the conversation. Right. The way that I delivered that presenter impact slide is how I prefer to do it. But I just wanted to give you a little context today, because a little bit of text and you taking notes is going to help a little bit too. So I wanted to give you a little bit more context here as well. Yeah, totally agree. We as learners can accelerate learning, accelerated learning, Myers accelerated learning, MEIER, Myers accelerated learning. There's a lot of research about how you can accelerate learning through using video, audio, and visuals. All right, accelerate learning, because our brains can only take so much. We have adults for a small amount of time. We can accelerate learning by using other means than just what we're doing here. So Myers, MEIER's Accelerated Learning is a book about that. Highly recommend getting that. Yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
What I've noticed through this early piece of the conversation here is, the impact of style and the realization that different elements, different parts, different segments of the presentation are worth a conscious shift of style in order to fix the purpose and the outcome from that particular element. And if they are mixed and matched in that sense, more likely to get much greater engagement and retention.
Yes, that is exactly the reason why, right? A lot of times it's us feeding different senses, right? Everyone has a learning preference. And so sometimes we have to design in different ways to feed those different ways. So sometimes suddenly we have to shift something and try a different way because we're feeding a certain style for a bit. Now let me make a shift. And if I hear somebody say something in class, maybe instantly I'll make a switch because, okay, I pulled this point from somebody's conversation. I need to hit on that because that's what this learner needs from me. Right. And so that's a shift for me. So I'm always ready to pivot and shift, because you said different styles come in and feed different things. That's exactly it. Kelly, go ahead and do your share, and we're going to have a quick breakout room.
Okay, so I liked the piece that you said you lay out your presentation on paper. I had not thought about that, so I like that one. And my question is about handouts. What is a great use, or do you use them at all when it comes to presentations, and what's the best practices?
Yep, I do. I use them quite a bit, because what happens after the class, if you don't push follow up on them, they need something to take away. So in objective writing, I tell people you have to provide a condition. A condition is something that we're giving them to learn from. So today I presented to them the Magers model for writing learning objectives. It was an actual model that I gave them on a piece of paper. And so what I did is, you're going to use this model to write effective learning objectives. So from the class, I told them by the end of this session, using Maker's model, you're going to be able to write effective learning objectives. So the condition was I gave them something to take with them that they can use later. Same thing for this, right? I can say, if I'm teaching a time management course, using the 5 strategies for time management, you're going to be able to do this. I will leave them with that document, right? So that way I know I'm presenting them something tangible they can take away. It's a condition. Given what, you're going to be able to do this. I will use software called Vengage, Vennngage. And I'm just going to see if I can go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone. Vennngage. That's a platform, cloud-based, that can do infographics, job aids, presentation, like 30 or 50 different things it can do, including infographics and like job aids. That's what I use it for, is actually infographics. I use it all the time because then you can print it to a PDF and send it to people and do all kinds of things. That's my common practice. All right, let's put some of this in practice as we are, okay? So I'd like to go ahead and send everybody to a breakout room. What we're going to do is we're going to put you in pairs if we can. Do we have an even number? 13 minus 2? One room will have 3, okay? So what we'll do is I want you to talk through what you would do the next time you stood up to present. What's the first thing you're going to do? Let's talk about actual delivery, because we're getting ready to talk about delivery. So hearing what we're talking about preparation, I don't want to hit on preparation. Let's start talking about delivery. If you were to go stand up in front of your next group, what's the first thing you're going to do when it comes to a delivery standpoint? That's what I want to hear, because I want to hit on the adult learning theory you've talked about, activities, presentation skills, preparation. I want you to just spend 2 minutes saying, okay, this is the first thing I would do. And give us your topic too. So give your partner your topic. This is my topic. This is the first thing that I would do. All right. And then I want to come back. We're going to debrief and then move on to what you're going to do during a presentation. Okay. We'll have 5 minutes total. All right. 5 minutes total. Any questions that I can answer before I have Isaac send us? Okay. Looks like we got Isaac. I don't think we have everybody, do we?
It's still recording.
I just hit record. So we're
Okay,
good.
good. Sweet. All right. Well, good. How'd that go for everybody? What were some very interesting first things that people said they were going to do?
I'll go. So I wrote down. So I was with Mary. So Mary said she wanted me to go because she hasn't done a lot of facilitation, does more teaching. So I said I would certainly introduce myself, make sure that I've got a little bit of credibility with the group, assuming that it's not there. Oh, they don't know me. I love the tip around engaging with the audience and the turning to your partner and asking a question and building that psychological safety, which Mary reminded me of, which was great. I would introduce the topic and I'd ask 3 questions. Would be my first thing. I'd ask 3 questions based on the topic. And the idea of the 3 questions would be to ask them a question about the topic. So they go, yeah, I know about the topic. Then go, would you like to know more about the topic, or would you like to know even more? 3 levels of questions. That's how I would probably start off.
And from a preparation standpoint, you're going to practice that a few times, right? For the preparation piece to get ready to deliver that. So I'm trying to okay, if I know I'm going to deliver this first, what practice am I going to need to do before that, right? And what kind of preparation I'm going to do. So hopefully that, what am I going to do first, led you to, okay, let me think about it. So that's where I'm trying to get everybody with the preparation, is we have to at least think before we can get to deliver, right? Okay. Go ahead, Marie, and then we're going to move on to deliver. You're muted.
So Kelly said that one of the things that she does, and I think that's a great example, is that she says their names. If you're in the Zoom room, she tries to walk around while she's introducing herself to make sure that she can get to know who the people are, and then maybe connect them together as she's doing that. So she's already engaging and making them feel comfortable because she's offering that up.
Yep, I love that. There's actually an exercise that I like to do when I'm face to face. What I'll do is I'll have tent cards that I provide to people, write their names on them. I have them write their name on the front and the back for me and for the people behind them, so people in the room can get to know them. But the activity I do is, before I have them put their name on their card, I actually have them put an adjective on the front of their name that starts with the same letter as their first name, explaining how they feel today. So then I've got a rhyming mechanism that I can use to try to remember their names. like really awesome Rusty, or melancholy Marie if it's a bad morning, or something like, just something I can remember, because that helps with name recognition. It also allows them to be creative and kind of get them some psychological safety too. So I love to do that little bitty piece, and I actually have them decorate their name cards too. Just a lot of people like to draw flowers, draw circles, it just gives them a chance to be a little creative out of the gate. So yeah, good ideas. Let's talk real quick about during the presentation. The thing that I'll say about during the presentation, I want everybody to have a good, strong start. We need people to understand that making a strong start really gets the engine going, right? We have to come out of the gate strong, right? To let them know that you're confident, because remember, confidence plays into you being credible, you being comfortable, and you also doing things that helps engage the audience, which is that next piece. Engaging the audience. Nothing is better than actually being able to make eye contact with everybody and smile. Use facial expressions, right? So during the presentation, engaging in eye contact is wonderful when it comes to that. The next thing I want to talk about is actually showing your passion. If you're not passionate about what you're talking about, honestly, you shouldn't be presenting it, because they're going to pick up on that, because what you are putting out, they're taking in, including your attitude for the day, your feelings for the day, right? Those are projectable things. I fully believe in that. Like whatever you're projecting, they're going to accept, right? So if you're not passionate about what you're talking about, you're already starting off giving them a situation that they're not going to be ready for. So always show your passion. I want to give you a few do's and don'ts of during the presentation. First thing I'll tell you, don't have your back to the audience when speaking. Nothing's worse than having to turn the screen and your back is to the audience. That's a big time don't. In fact, in a lot of cultures, that's very disrespectful. In Asia, if you ever were to turn your back while you're presenting, people will get offended and actually leave. So it's a very big understanding that turning your back is a big no-no. Don't block the presentation screen. That's another one. If there's something on the screen you want them to see, nothing's worse than having to block them. Now, if there's a projector in the middle of the room going forward and you're standing off to the side, and now you don't need them to look at the screen and you're ready to move to the center to actually present, do you know what you can press on the keyboard of your computer to black out the screen? So on your keyboard, in presentation mode, if you press the letter B as in boy, B, that's for blackout. That will actually black out your screen. You have to be in presentation mode though, okay? What that does is that blacks out the screen, and you can actually then stand in the middle of the room and talk to people. You can also do that with whiting out the screen by doing the W. B for blackout, W for whiteout. All right. And what that does is, but you have to be in presentation mode. It can work in Mac or PC, but you have to be presenting. Now, I know it works in PowerPoint. I have not tested it in Canva. I don't think I can do that from while just on my monitor. I have to have an actual external source going into my computer. Okay. But that is something that I use all the time, is the B key. All right, go ahead, Barb.
Does it block out the people, or just the I mean, if you're in person, obviously it wouldn't matter, but
Right.
you don't want to do that on Zoom.
I don't do it virtually because you can still see me. You can see me at all times. I'm only talking about if you're in person and need the screen to be blacked out because you need to stand in front of the projector. If I'm on
Right,
the
got
screen
it.
here, what I'll do is maybe if I want them to not concentrate, I'll just quit sharing. Yeah. Okay. So that's something I use to keep me from blocking the presentation. Again, also don't read the presentation. Keep eye contact with your audience, right? If you need to make I use index cards when I facilitate live training. When I do my training, I will either hold my facilitator manual or I will actually do bullet points on index cards. There's nothing wrong with that. I would rather know what I'm talking about and know where I'm going than fumble up and mess up, because that's going to project to the audience, right? So I have and I know that Ivan, when he speaks, he uses index cards, or he'll print out the presentation and have the notes out to the side. There's nothing wrong with that. His presentations are still just as good as they were if you didn't have them. So it's all about how you're presenting to the audience, right? And always remember, don't keep your hands out front. I call that the fig leaf, right? If you keep your hands out in front, that's a closed type of stance instead of an open stance where you can move, because I do want you to move and gesture. Part of the do's I want you to remember actually doing is you actually have to move around a little bit, right? So be free to move. Like if you're locked up, you're not feeling good. Like you're not letting the audience know you're doing well. The thing I do want you to do is use pictures. So I'm glad you brought that up about the pictures. I love using pictures in my presentations. It's what's going to actually grab the viewer's attention, right? You definitely want to grab their attention by using pictures. Use contrasting colors for text and background. It doesn't have to be black and white all the time, right? It doesn't have to be the same stuff over and over. Change it up. Have yellows on this one, oranges on this one, like colors that drive them to want to engage. Avoid using information overload. Don't give them more information than what they can take. You have to find that balance between too much information and not enough. Use animations where you can. Here's my disclaimer when it comes to animations. Don't overdo animations. Like the first time my previous manager at an old organization, when she learned to use animations, she had like 82 animations in like 20 slides. I was like, nope, we're gonna fix this, young lady. We're gonna work on this, right? It can be too much. Move around, gesture, walk. That lets people know that you're not tied to a lectern and that you're nervous. Exuding confidence is you moving around, changing up your arms, gesturing with your arms, doing things like that lets people know that you're good at what you're doing. You feel good, you know what you're talking about, you're passionate about what you're talking about, which is going to carry over to the audience. Okay. All right, real quick. So the last thing that I want to do before we leave is what are your biggest takeaways from today? We didn't get to the follow-up piece. We're going to start next week talking about follow-up because to me, the biggest piece of the puzzle is preparation and deering. We'll start next week with follow-up because I'm going to do something that's going to be a follow-up and I'm going to see if it has any benefit to you, okay? But it has to be over before I can do that, okay? What were your biggest takeaways from today? Couple of minutes.
I really liked the idea that you shared back with me of, maybe doing a little couple people at a time to build some comfort, and then getting them comfortable sharing. And I really loved your idea about the card with the names and decorating it just to put a little fun in it. So I may give you that greatest form of compliment and steal that.
Oh, that's not stealing. That's just a way to do it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm also gonna put something in the chat, Mr. Sketch markers. If you don't use Mr. Sketch markers, you are missing the boat. They are a set of markers that are smelly markers that actually all of them have scents. Nothing's better than watching people open these markers and start drawing all over their cards and they smell them like, oh, that's cherry. They're very safe. I have the 24 pack that's got buttered popcorn and nacho cheese in it, just saying. All right. Nothing's better than having Mr. Sketch markers when I do live stuff. People love smelling that stuff. Yep. What else? What else? Any other big takeaways today? Go ahead, Wendy.
I mentioned before, but I really like the reinforcement of less is more in the presentations. When I watched people in BNI doing their presentations, and I was having this conversation with a financial advisor yesterday, all these little words they put on the screen and the numbers and the too much. So reinforcing that was great. The 6x6 rule is really good. I loved everything, but that was probably great reinforcement for me. And
That's
validate.
awesome. Awesome. I'm so glad for that. A lot of times we just need reminders of that. Sometimes it just needs to be conjured up again, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's almost like riding a bike. We never really forget. Sometimes we just have to be reminded again.
And I'm going to see
Anybody?
if sketch markers are available in Australia. I'll have to Google.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. No, we can get that happen. All right. Anybody else before we go to our homework for the week? Go ahead, Marie. And then Martha, go ahead.
So the 6x6 was really good, but what took me better was the 3x3, because if I can condense it down to even less than 6x6 and still deliver the same content, that's going to be better for me. It'll be more powerful.
To me, the winner is engagement. right? So if
Mhm.
I can get my points out sooner and get to the engagement piece, it's a bigger win for me.
Mhm.
Yep. Go ahead, Martha.
I was just gonna say that the reminder of the preparation that it goes in for people to be properly prepared. I tend to fly off the cuff sometimes. Oh, I've done this before. Oh, oh, the content's been prepared for me already. I can go in and read this and wing this. And I mean, I think I've been fairly successful actually at doing this. I can't even imagine, and I'm so excited when I take all of this and actually properly prepare the growth that is going to show
Yeah.
up and what's going to happen for the people who get to experience who's in your room after learning all of this from all of us who get to maybe change a life or 10 or 15 or the world. Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. Thank you, Rusty.
Yeah, no, you're so welcome, by the way. And I was the same way. Like I can fly off the cuff anytime. I can fly by the seat of my pants. Like I can do that. But when I decided to do a mindset switch and prepare and do all of these things with a conscious, targeted effort to do it, it exponentially made it better. Not that it wasn't good before, but it took it to the newest heights when I started doing it this way and started thinking about adult learning theory and engagement and less is more and presenting. Like it just took it to new heights. Like the feedback I'm getting from different areas, I'm just like, they were like, oh my God, that was the best thing I've ever been through my life. I'm like, wow, I just did a couple of small things, right? So what was good just went better. So that's exactly what it is, right? We can each fly by the seat of our pants probably on something, but it's what makes it better. Yep, you're exactly right. Great, great, great stuff. And I'm so glad to hear, Wendy, that Mr. Sketch is available in Australia. All right, so as usual, get with your accountability partner this week. Again, we're going to send out the slides and the recording. Practice delivering in the mirror. I know it's painful. Grab something that you haven't presented before and just try doing it in the mirror. Maybe even record it and play it back to yourself and see what you sounded like. Was it good? Was it not? That's really going to be a telltale sign. The last thing I want you to do is design one slide for your workshop. Go ahead and see if we can't put to the test something we've been talking about today. It can be who's in your room. It can be your next talk. It can be something for you, Marie, Saturday, but it sounds like it's already been given to you. You can pick any topic you want. I just want you to kind of put together something that we've talked about today, okay? It could be an image with one bullet point. It could be 3 by 3. It could be 6 by 6. It could be whatever. Just put one slide together and see what it does for you, okay? And then the last thing, we're going to just remind you about the facilitation plan. Keep adding to that facilitation plan. We're getting little chunks, little more and more every week. Keep adding to that facilitation plan, okay? With that, that's the end of the stuff. I'll hang around for a few minutes, but I just want to be respectful of your time. It's 5 after. I apologize for that. I'll make it up to you next week, but I'll hang around for any questions that may need to be asked because I'm not in a hurry. Isaac, if you need to leave, you can make me host unless you need the room, but otherwise, I'm free to hang out for a few minutes if anybody has any questions.
I'm good for a few.
Thanks,
Cool.
Isaac. Thanks,
Thanks,
Rusty.
everyone.
No problem. See you guys next week.
Right.
Excited.
Rusty, what show are you gonna see?
Tonight it is And Juliet.
Where are you staying in New York?
Actually, I'm just one block off of Times Square. I'm on
Nice.
42nd Street and Broadway.
I
Oh,
grew up in New York. I grew up in that area.
Yep,
Not too
I'm
far from
right
the,
down from Madame Tussauds.
yeah, that's a great area. And it's
Yep.
changed so much since I was a kid
Oh,
too.
this is the first time in 18 years I've been here. It's been 18 years since it's been a long time and it's changed a
Mhm.
lot. Bryant Park is one block that way and Madame
Yeah.
Tussauds is one block that way. So I'm right next to the Knickerbocker.
Cool.
Yep.
Rusty, my ancestors were Westies, so.
Okay, I love it.
Oh,
no,
we
I'm
should
having a
talk,
great
buddy.
time
We
over
should
here.
talk. Mm-hmm. I got
Yeah,
some of
that's a
those in
good
my
thing.
background too.
Yeah,
So,
Yep.
Rusty, I have a quick question on the slides. That if I do take one slide from the Who's in Your Room,
Mhm.
using those slides, can I create something of my own using using the content from it, or do we have to use that slide?
Nope, you don't have
Okay,
to use that
cool.
slide.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I can have a little bit of independence.
Of course.
Yeah, as long as the content stays the same, like as long as the points that we're landing, like as long as we're not changing, their content. If
Okay,
we
okay.
want it to be designed differently, look differently, that's fine. As long as the same
Okay.
points land, That's fine.
No,
All right.
what we don't want is the taken out of context thing. You know,
Yes.
like you've seen things happen before where someone wrote something and someone took just that section and like made it mean something else in their narrative.
Okay,
That's what we don't want. But as long
Okay.
as it, you know, fits the intention of the program and just supports what you're doing, absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
All right, cool.
But only for group 2, because you guys are the coolest.
It's true. I mean, he's not
Just
wrong.
kidding.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm gonna
Russ,
send this to group 1 just to mess with them.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I've just got a question around the facilitation plan. I am guilty of having not worked on it yet, so I'll fess up
Okay.
on that one straight
That's
away.
okay. I understand.
but
I'm
what
managing my miracles. It's okay.
Yeah, no, just there's lots of stuff going on. Anyway, blah blah. So I just want to make sure I'm following. I'm looking at it at the moment. That's why I'm looking over this way. I can see what's already been filled in. So the aim of this is that we literally pick a topic. So it's a huge, just there, it's a huge in the room facilitation plan. That makes it easy. I'm thinking, do I have to make up a topic or what is it? Helps if I read it. So is this just designed to say, okay, well, if I'm doing a 1 hour workshop, I'll do it this way. Or if I'm doing a 3 hour workshop, I'll do it this way. Like, are we making up our own workshop design?
Yep. Basically, it's a plan for you to break your content up. So if I've got a 1 hour content, this content block is going to be this topic. I'm going to do this and it's going to be this long. And then I'm going to do this activity for these materials for this long. My second topic is going to be this one. It's going to be this long and we're going to talk about this. So it's just a plan from beginning to end. That 1 hour is going to help be a guide for you that you're kind of planning this out.
And we've already given you a model. So the easy answer is just take what we did, time about how long the first section takes, and then you go, all right, so if I presented that, maybe it's 5 minutes and it's on this topic, right?
Yeah.
So then as you get comfortable with that, start making it your own, start putting in your own content or your own, like, hey, what if we made this a 45-minute presentation or a 3-hour workshop? How would I change that? Would I insert an activity here? So it's kind of this modular template that you can use. And we've already given you, a 90-minute workshop with slides and times. Like, you already have that to go off of if you want a starting place, but we don't want to hold you back and only let you do, what's in there currently.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But also for the homework, when you're talking about this, I can do this like on what you commented on Facebook today. And it was interesting because I said, I'm not even going to look at the slides because they were behind me, and the photo that was taken had the no bullying slides. All it was a picture with no bullying on the back,
Mhm.
and that's what my slides were for the whole presentation.
I love that.
But I could do a plan based on that program because I actually would like to kind of delve deeper into that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be in Who's in Your Room.
Okay.
And I'm happy to, Barb, if you wanted to, collaborate on that or run something past me or whatever to
Yeah, I'd
set
love to.
time. Let's chat about that. So,
All right.
all right. Cool.
Great.
Sounds good.
All
All
right.
right. I
Well, I'm
have to
gonna
go
go
take
start
a
getting ready for my
2-year-old
midterm.
home.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.